Pittsburgh Steelers take on the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans in Houston Sunday at 1 o'clock. And a lot of people are calling this a trap game, but I don't think it's a trap game because the Steelers haven't played too well, even though they're 2-1. I didn't know what the Texans are. They're 1-2, right? Let's see. Houston Texans record. Yeah, they're 1-2. They're coming off a fucking amazing win against their division rivals, Jacksonville Jaguars. They shit all over them Pussycats, man. So, yeah, C.J. Stroud has been balling. They can't run the ball or stop the run worth the shit. And they also can't protect Stroud too well. We'll go through some of those statistics. Let's start off with yards per carry by the team as a whole. Dameon Pierce, their running back, is really the only guy that they have. I'm pretty sure C.J. Stroud, he seems like he's had more yards rushing than Dameon Pierce. But they have 210 total yards this season on 75 attempts for a 2.8 average per carry. Steelers have 9 less yards, but also have 13 less attempts. Steelers have 62 carries, 201 yards, yard per carry, 3.2 average. So both these teams have been shit on the ground. But granted, the Texans have played the Ravens, the Colts, and the Jags. None of those teams have really premier defenses. You can argue the Ravens, but I haven't been impressed by the Ravens, really. I'm also very biased towards the Steelers. And then we know the Steelers have played 49ers, top 3 defense, if not the best. Cleveland Browns, all their statistics say that they have the number 1 defense. If you look at their defensive statistics as a team, they're like first in a bunch of categories. So you could argue that they have the best defense in the league. And last week against the Las Vegas Raiders, things did look better. So you got to take, the Steelers' yards per carry with a grain of salt, man, because really 2 out of 3 weeks, it's like those teams are going to shut down everybody, and they have shut down everybody. Let's go to some more stats. This is NFL teams' opponents' rush yards per game. So basically yards allowed. Houston is allowing they're allowing 117 yards per game, whereas the Steelers are allowing 151 yards per game. But take this with a grain of salt too, because the Browns fucking run on everybody and the 49ers run on everybody. So look, this third column right here, the last game, Houston is right in alignment with their 117 average. The last game, they allowed 116 yards on the ground to the Jags. And then last week, Pittsburgh allowed 69 yards on the ground to the Raiders. So things are improving for Pittsburgh, and things are status quo for Houston. And that 116 yards last week against the Jags were losing a lot of this game. The Jags were losing like pretty much the entirety of the game. So they were probably throwing the ball even more than they would usually. So that's something to keep an eye on. I mean, you could say the same thing for the Raiders as well. They were losing most of the game. But for the most part, the game wasn't too out of reach until like halfway through the third quarter, where the Raiders had to abandon the run. So you could argue this like it's the same thing for both teams. And Pittsburgh only allowed 69 yards, whereas Houston allowed 116 yards. So that's good for Pittsburgh. Now, this is opponent yards per rush attempt. Houston allows 4.3 on the season, whereas Pittsburgh allows 5.6. And last week was the same. Pittsburgh allowed 5.7 to Josh Jacobs last week. And Houston allowed 5.5 last week. So they were even worse last week than usual. So that's something to keep an eye on too. And Houston's run troubles also, by the way, have dated back to last year. Look at this. 2022. Houston, 5.1. Not good. And then 2022 yards per game. Houston, 170. So their rushing defensive woes have just been prominent for a while now. This is opponent yards per pass attempt defensively. Pittsburgh has allowed 6.2 yards per pass attempt, whereas Houston has allowed 6.9 yards per pass attempt. So again, that's good in the Steelers' favor. Opponents' pass yards per game. Houston is allowing 223 yards, whereas Pittsburgh is allowing 235 yards. And last week, Jimmy G threw for over 300, but got sacked a couple times. So 293 yards last week, if you take into the sacks into consideration. And then this next one is where shit gets juicy. Pittsburgh averages 4.3 sacks per game. Houston averages 1.3 sacks per game. Pittsburgh had 4 against the Raiders. Houston had 0 against Trevor Lawrence last week. 0. They have 2 sacks on the season, Houston. Not great. And then, how many times has each quarterback been sacked per game? Kenny gets sacked 2.7 times per game, so about 3. Last week, against one of the premier pass rushers, you think every week Pittsburgh has gone up against premier pass rushers. Nick Bosa, Myles Garrett, Max Crosby. Do the Ravens have really a premier pass rusher? Do the Colts really have a premier pass rusher? Do the Jags, do they really have a premier pass rusher? Not like those other 3 teams that Pittsburgh has played. Pittsburgh QB Kenny Pickett, 2.7 times per game. Houston, CJ Stroud, is getting sacked 3.7 times per game. And last week, he didn't get sacked once. So CJ Stroud has been sacked 8.5 times. And they have not played TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. Granted, I'm pretty sure Laramie Tunsil has been out, but still, TJ Watt plays on the right side. Laramie Tunsil's a left tackle. TJ Watt's going to be going up against their right tackle now. So just that, the sack stats right there, I think this game plays in Pittsburgh's hands. I really do. I think TJ Watt is going to have a field day. Well, his line has to be at 2.5 sacks, right? I don't know, man. I think this is good for the Steelers. Good matchup. They should be able to run the ball. And they should be able to stop the run. So, yeah, I expect TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Keanu Benton, and the boys to get after it. Let's go to some FanDuel Sportsbook lines. I'll do like player props and stuff this weekend before the game. Some bets and parlays that I like. But for now, the line, Pittsburgh is 3-point favorites. And usually you get 3 points when you're the home team. So really, Vegas is saying Pittsburgh is a 6-point favorite. I think that's about right. I would probably have the line around 4.5. I expect Pittsburgh to win by more than a field goal. I do think that CJ Stroud will be able to throw the ball on us, but I also think that he's going to be pressured all day long, and I think he's going to have some mistakes. Over under is 41.5. Oh man, that's probably about right too. Um, I would say this game ends like 20. I think the offense goes, I think Pittsburgh's offense plays a lot better this week. I think 27-13. So I'm going to go at 40 points. So I get to go the under 27-13. I think Pittsburgh, I just said 4.5 point favorites, but I expect this, I expect it to be a blowout. But Steelers total points over under is 22.5, and the Texans is 20.5. I think that's high on the Texans' behalf. I do not think that they're going to get 20 points. I just don't see that happening. Pittsburgh, I expect it's around 23 is probably about right. Um, again, 27-13. That's my prediction. So yeah, man, I'll get more into the lines whenever they get released. They usually get released on Saturday, like with player props and whatnot, like Kenny Pickett passing yards, Najee Harris rushing yards, George Pickens catches yards, things like that. So if you like this video, hit the like, hit the subscribe. Help me out, man. I got 2 subscribers, and one of them is my other YouTube. Still new to this shit, but yeah, man, I appreciate y'all listening. Go Pittsburgh. Peace.